let me see if I can translate that. I think what you're saying is if the young people want to go in their quest, never-ending, for new ascents, first ascents, in all the faraway places, and then some of the places, the former Soviet Union, China and places like that that have opened up, then let them go. But the main thing is, if you want to climb, you just go climb and enjoy the hell out of it, and that's what it's all about. Is that?
That's exactly right. What somebody else is doing has nothing to do with us unless they impact us unfavorably.
Yeah, and the equipment will continue to change, I suppose.
It always gets better.
Always gets better.
And the climbers always get better.
Well, I had the opportunity to interview the Washburns yesterday, and we talked about gear, and they're climbing Mount McKinley, which is a cold, awful place, I'm told. I have been to McKinley, but I haven't climbed it.
It's a cold, wonderful place.
Cold, wonderful. Well, that was an inappropriate description on my part. I've probably talked to too many people who used saw the negative side, because I've known so many people who went to climb it who never made it.
Yeah.
And of course they come back, and this is the worst place in the world. I would never go back there and all that. But you've climbed McKinley?
Yes.
And you think it's a cold, wonderful place.
Definitely.
Yeah. But
it's a great mountain.
Yeah. But anyway, they were saying that they thought that their surplus army gear was pretty good, and if they were going back, they'd probably get into somewhat the same thing. They were quite disdainful of a lot of this modern gear and clothing that's being used.
Yeah, well, you know, Brad Washburn, he's an old geezer like me, you know, and it's hard for us guys to get up to speed. And when I went back to Yosemite with Ryan, I was much intimidated by how to figure out how you're supposed to climb El Capitan these days. And after I got through doing it a few times, I realized, hey, things aren't much different than they used to be.
Yeah. Well, I had an interesting experience with Pratt once over in Devil's Tower, and we'd done it a number of times. We would meet there in the last weekend in September, which is a time that the leaves are turned and there's nobody around much. And the little town of Hewlett, you know, has its pig roast on Saturday night, and it's barbecue, Chamber of Commerce barbecue on Sunday, so you get a lot of free food. So we started up the Durance Route, and to my utter surprise, Chuck pulls out a chalk bag, you know, and I always thought that Exum is the most conservative place I've ever seen. I mean, you know, I think they were using gold line ropes years after there were Kernmantle ropes, and their techniques were always seemed to be a bit behind everybody else, and because of their conservatism and their. I was really surprised, and Chuck sort of looked down and he said, well, you know, there are a lot of people climbing this and they're greasy hands, this might help. Well, I had a chalk bag. I'd had one for quite a while, but I'd never used it around Chuck Pratt. So I can imagine you going back there in '97, and you talked about getting the gear. But it looked to me like, from the pictures, and my memory of the pictures, and God knows I got a ton of books, that you were just climbing. It looked like you're climbing in regular old lug-soled hiking boots.
Yeah, well, they would resemble that.
But they were really from Europe?
Yeah.
I have an old pair of, I guess that's what they were. What did you call them, clutter?
Clutter shoe.
Clutter shoes?
Just climbing shoe. Yeah, they weren't as good as they are now, but they did the job.
Yeah. Was Clutter somebody who made them, or?
That just stands for climbing and climbing shoe in German.
Oh, I see.
I think that's what it
Yeah.
is.
Oh, okay. Well, that's an interesting bit of information
Yeah.
I never knew before.
Yeah.
But well, that's it. I never talked to anybody about that, but they just look like what I started out. I started climbing in hiking boots, and
Yeah.
and I've done the Grand a few times with jogging shoes, and worked real well.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and of course I think in Germany and I think some of the early climbs on Devil's Tower where they had straw soles, like canvas with straw soles,
Yeah.
and weird gear. But boy, the stuff today is pretty neat, isn't it?
Yep.
And I think the Mr. Washburn, if he were going up McKinley, he might rethink that Army surplus gear, which is what I use.
Yeah, it was good enough. We had good enough stuff to do it.
So climbing is going on, and it's going to. I guess you would agree it's going to be more popular than ever.
Oh yeah, I reckon it's a good wholesome activity.
But we're going to have to watch what we do and be better citizens about keeping the places cleaned up, I think, too.
Yeah, we got to be good citizens.
Yeah.
That's what we hate. That we want to go climbing and away from all the regular, requirements and restrictions and rules and all that. But after we get there, we find out that it's the same.
Yeah.
We still got to do what's right, and there's a big payoff when we do.
Tom, I would never, in my wildest dreams, characterize you as you did yourself just now as an old geezer, but as one of the greats of this American rock climbing community. What's some advice for young people who might someday be watching this tape up in the Climbers Ranch some cold night? Or
If they're still watching it now, they're okay in my book. Must have been a long storm. Yeah, I don't have any advice particularly for anybody. You know, we go through life and we do the best we can do. Everybody is doing the best they can do all of the time, and there's a lot to be learned in climbing. We learn a lot about our limits and problem solving and facing ourselves. And I think that the crux of the matter probably is transferring that over into life. We don't want to get stuck in climbing. Climbing's not worth our whole lives. And we can transfer over some of the things we learn climbing into the other aspects of our lives. It'll be a good thing for us.
one more question. I've always wondered how climbing routes or first ascents or bouldering or whatever got the term problem. There probably are a number of synonyms that you could use for problem in terms of looking at something you want to do in climbing. Would that have been an aeronautical engineer named Tom Frost who first started using problem?
You mean like when we say boulder problem?
Yeah,
or
right.
Like that?
Well, you just mentioned is you're going up a route, you have a problem. That's the term. We have to, if you have an overhang or whatever it might be, it's called a problem.
Yeah,
Where do you suppose that came from?
I guess that's what life's all about, you know. Life is a problem itself, and figuring out how to solve it is where the challenge is for us.
Yeah, well, that's true.